Somewhere out there, rusting in the back corner of an old farm, sits a machine that once kept an entire operation alive. Not a tractor, not a combine, a hay baler. And if you know anything about farming in the 1970s and 1980s, you know that the hay baler wasn't just equipment. It was the difference between a herd that survived the winter and one that didn't. These 10 machines roared across millions of acres, tied billions of bales, and then one by one were forgotten. Today we bring them back. Number 1. Vermeer 6050-605C, 1971 to mid-1970s. We start at the very beginning of the modern round baler era, and you cannot tell that story without mentioning Gary Vermeer of Pella, Iowa. In 1972, Gary Vermeer designed and fabricated a round baler based loosely on the concept of the old Allis-Chalmers roto baler, and the Vermeer company began selling its Model 605, which is widely recognized as the first modern round baler. The Vermeer design used belts to compact hay into a cylindrical shape, establishing the template that virtually every belt-based round baler would follow for the next 50 years. The story behind why Vermeer built this baler is worth telling. A local cattle producer told Gary Vermeer he was getting out of the cattle business entirely because handling hay had become too labor-intensive. Gary decided to find a better way. That conversation between a cattle farmer and an equipment manufacturer gave birth to one of the most important agricultural machines of the 20th century. The earliest Vermeer 605 models, particularly the 605A, used a wide belt on the bottom of the chamber to start the bale and keep it turning. This design had a quirk. If the bale didn't catch and start rotating on its own, the belt would slip on the top rollers, generate heat, and occasionally smoke. Farmers who ran these early machines quickly learned that patience was just as important as horsepower. You had to approach windrows carefully, feed the chamber consistently, and trust the machine. The 605C, which came out in the early 1970s, switched to rollers on the bottom of the chamber to form and turn the bale. This was an improvement, but the machine still required skill. In straight grass, sometimes the hay would come out between the belts instead of rolling properly. Operators who understood the 605C could produce beautiful tight bales all day long. Operators who didn't quickly developed a collection of frustrating half-formed cylinders and jammed feed rollers. Despite its quirks, the Vermeer 605 series launched an industry revolution by establishing that one person operating one tractor could bale hay in large round packages without needing a crew of laborers following behind. Vermeer essentially redrew the economics of livestock farming in America. The 605C is largely forgotten today. Many sell for near scrap prices at auction, but its influence is impossible to overstate. Number 2. Hesston 5400-5800. Round balers, 1976. If Vermeer built the first modern round baler, Hesston built the machine that proved it could be a one-man operation at commercial scale. In 1976, Hesston Corporation, headquartered in Hesston, Kansas, introduced the 5400 and 5800 large round balers, and in doing so, they turned hay production into something a single operator could manage entirely on their own. Hesston Corporation had been founded in 1947 by Lyle Yost and Adin Holdeman, and the company had built a strong reputation for innovative hay equipment. In the early 1950s, Lyle Yost purchased patents from an Iowa farmer for a self-propelled windrower, and Hesston launched that machine in 1955. By the time the 5400 and 5800 round balers arrived in 1976, Hesston was already known as a company that thought differently about hay. The 5400 and 5800 were built for farmers dealing with a growing labor shortage. Throughout the 1970s, rural labor became increasingly expensive and increasingly scarce. The Hesston round balers offered a direct answer. One man, one tractor, large bales, done. The machines were designed with clean, straightforward mechanical systems that kept them running in the field and reduced downtime during the narrow baling windows that hay farmers depend on. The 5400 and 5800 names are not household words today, even among vintage equipment enthusiasts. But when these machines rolled out in 1976, they represented a serious step forward in round baling technology and Hesston's commitment to producing farmer-focused equipment. The Hesston, Kansas facility would go on to manufacture some of the most important hay equipment in North America, and the 5400 and 5800 were part of that heritage. Today, the brand operates as Hesston by Massey Ferguson under Agxio, and the Hesston, Kansas plant remains Agxio's #1 North American location for manufacturing implements. Number 3. Hesston 4800 Large Square Baler. 1978, 2 years after the 5400 and 5800 round balers, Hesston did something nobody had ever done before. In 1978, Hesston Corporation introduced the 4800, the world's first large square baler. This machine was capable of compacting hay into large square bales that could be stacked, tarped in the field for weather protection, and loaded onto trucks or containers for transport. It was an entirely new category of equipment, and it changed the hay industry permanently. The Hesston 4800 produced 4x4-foot square bales, and the machine was engineered specifically to minimize dry matter loss and increase hay production efficiency. Those two concerns, dry matter loss and efficiency, were the central problems facing commercial hay producers in the late 1970s. Round bales, despite their advantages, were not ideal for storage or transport in all situations. Large square bales offered better stacking density, better moisture management when properly stored, and significantly easier handling in commercial livestock operations. The knotting technology in these large square balers was particularly significant. Hesston engineers developed a double knot knotting system for their large square balers in the early 1970s. And remarkably, the knotters developed during that era are nearly identical in design to the knotters being installed on Hesston balers in modern production. That is more than 50 years of essentially unchanged knotting technology, a testament to how well the original design was engineered. Depending on the model configuration, large square bales from machines like the Hesston 4800 could weigh anywhere from 1,000 to 2,200 pounds, making them far more concentrated packages than conventional small square bales. A plunger inside the machine could compress hay with forces ranging from 45,000 to 169,000 pounds, depending on the model, creating incredibly dense bales that held their form and protected the interior hay from weather damage. The Hesston 4800 is not forgotten in the equipment world. Historians of agricultural machinery know it well. But among the broader public, this machine rarely gets the recognition it deserves as a genuine first. It defined a product category that remains a cornerstone of commercial hay production today, and it came from a small city in Kansas called Hesston. Number 4. New Holland 850 Chain Round Baler, 1974 to 1978. New Holland has a longer history in the baler business than almost anyone. The company introduced the industry's first self-tie small square baler back in 1937, and they never stopped innovating. In 1974, New Holland entered the round baler market with the Model 850, and by today's standards, it looks like an industrial relic. An imposing chain and bars design, completely devoid of sheet metal covering. Raw iron. Industrial purpose. No apologies. The 850 was New Holland's first round baler, and it established the company's presence in a market that was growing rapidly in the mid-1970s. The chain design used heavy-duty chains and bars to form the bale chamber, creating a fixed chamber system that differed from the belt-based approach Vermeer was using. The machine was built with New Holland's characteristic durability and was supported by the company's established dealer network across North America. In 1978, the 850 was replaced by the 851 round baler, and other models, including the 845 and 846, appeared around the same time. The evolution was rapid. New Holland understood that round balers were the future, and they were moving quickly to establish competitive models. The 848, which appeared in the 1980s, was a notable upgrade because it featured airbags to adjust bale density, replacing the tension springs used on older balers. This gave operators far more precise control over how tightly each bale was packed. In 1982, New Holland made another landmark move when the 855 became the first New Holland round baler to use net wrap, called the fast net option, instead of twine. Net wrap allowed faster bale formation and better weather resistance, and it became the standard wrapping method for round balers in subsequent decades. By the late 1980s, New Holland began transitioning from chains to belts on their round balers, which improved density and operating speed. By this point, the 850, the chain-clad original from 1974, was thoroughly obsolete, but it had served its purpose as the machine that got New Holland into the round baler market at exactly the right moment. Number 5. John Deere 336 Small Square Baler, 1972 to 1980s. Not every forgotten baler from this era was a round baler. The John Deere 336 was a small square baler that earned fierce and lasting loyalty among the farmers who used it. Introduced in 1972, the 336 was a no-nonsense machine that made clean, square, consistent bales, and in farming communities across the country, it became known as one of the most reliable small square balers ever built. John Deere built its reputation in the small square baler market, partly through simplicity of design. The 336 used a minimum of drive chains compared to many competitors, which meant fewer wear points and fewer breakdowns during busy baling season. The bales it produced were notably square, not trapezoidal, not irregular, which made them easier to stack on wagons, in barns, and in hay storage facilities. When you're stacking thousands of bales by hand, the geometry of each individual bale matters enormously. The 336 went into production in 1972 and ran with essentially no major design changes for years. A farmer who bought one of the first models sold in their state in 1972 would still find the machine largely identical a decade later, with only minor component changes. Later production models moved the needle brake to the left side of the bale chamber, which made it easier to access for repairs. A different cast iron top wire guide was also introduced on later units and could be retrofitted to older machines. John Deere cemented its reputation in small square balers with the broader 300 series, which included minimum drive chains and exceptional bale consistency. The 336 was the cornerstone of this success. Up until the early 1970s, New Holland had been the clear sales leader in small square balers, but John Deere's 300 series balers shifted market dominance significantly. By the mid-1970s, Deere had become a major force in the segment. After the mid-1990s, the rise of the round baler effectively pushed small square balers to the margins of American hay production. And with that shift, the 336's era quietly ended. Number 6. New Holland 326 Small Square Baler, early 1980s. The New Holland 326 holds a specific place in small square baler history. As the highest capacity small square baler New Holland made during the early 1980s, it was the largest small square baler in the New Holland lineup at the time. The machine you used when you had serious acreage and needed to keep pace without slowing down. New Holland's engineering on the 326 included their patented power pivot system, which allowed the machine to use a relatively small PTO shaft from the tractor while the tongue pivoted on a carrier bearing. This design meant operators could make tight turns without binding the drive line, an important practical advantage when working fields with irregular boundaries or turning at row ends in larger operations. The power pivot tongue could be equipped as either a manual swing or a hydraulic swing, giving buyers a choice based on their operational needs. The 326 was built for the tractors of its era, large, heavy machines that were becoming standard on American farms. As acreage per farm grew through the 1970s and early 1980s, the driveline was a heavy Category 5 setup, described as plenty sufficient for the tractors of the time. The machine was a serious workhorse designed for commercial or large-scale operations, where baling speed and bale volume mattered more than anything else. When the 326 was phased out, New Holland replaced it with the 575, which would go on to be built for over 25 years and become what many in the industry called the Cadillac of small square balers, the industry standard #1 baler in its segment. But the 326 came first, and the 575 carried forward many of the same design principles with refinements. The driveline connection grew heavier to accommodate bigger tractors, the tongue was strengthened, and plastic PTO shields replaced the metal ones from the 326. The 326 may be overshadowed by its famous successor, but it was the machine that established the design language New Holland would refine into a 25-year success story. Number 7. Allis-Chalmers 303 Square Baler, 1970s. Here's one that even veteran equipment collectors sometimes miss. The Allis-Chalmers 303 Square Baler. Allis-Chalmers had acquired Jones Balers, a British manufacturer, and the 303 was manufactured at the Allis-Chalmers Mouldworks facility in North Wales, United Kingdom. This gave the machine a distinctly different engineering character from the American-made balers dominating the market at the time. The 303 operated in parts of the American market where Allis-Chalmers had strong dealer presence, but it never achieved the widespread adoption of New Holland or John Deere products. In many regions, farmers simply were not familiar with the brand in the context of hay equipment, and the dealer support network was thinner than what competitors offered. Part sourcing could be challenging, and for a machine that operated in the short, critical windows of hay season, dealer support and parts availability were not trivial concerns. They were deal breakers. Allis-Chalmers eventually disposed of their British agricultural line to J.C. Bamford of Uttoxeter, Staffordshire, United Kingdom, better known today as JCB. This transfer effectively ended the AC baler lineage, and the 303 was left without a manufacturer to support it. Machines that still exist today are genuine orphans in the spare parts world, relying on used parts markets and the ingenuity of their owners. The 303 is perhaps the most truly forgotten machine on this list, not just obsolete, but manufacturer orphaned, geographically unusual in its American market presence, and carrying the AC brand in a product category where Allis-Chalmers never really established itself as a dominant player. Finding one operational today is a genuine discovery, and the owners who keep them running deserve recognition for their mechanical commitment. Number 8. Gehl 1470 Variable Chamber Round Baler. Late 1980s to 1991. Gehl Company, headquartered in West Bend, Wisconsin, was a serious player in the round baler market during the 1980s, and the 1470 was one of their signature products in the late part of that decade. Gehl had an interesting relationship with other manufacturers during this period. In the late 1970s, the company built balers for Ford under a private label arrangement, and there were various cross-brand parts relationships that reflected how interconnected the agricultural equipment supply chain was during this era. The Gehl 1470 was a variable chamber round baler that produced a 4-foot wide bale and was still being marketed as late as 1991, when a brochure was printed for the 1470 and the related 1870 model. The 1470 and 1870 were closely related machines. The primary differences were roller width, number of belts, and pickup width, which gave buyers choices based on crop type and field conditions. The 1870 made a wider bale and used more belts accordingly. The variable chamber design of the 1470 meant that bale size could be adjusted based on conditions and operator preference, a significant practical advantage over fixed chamber machines that locked you into one bale diameter. Variable chamber systems were becoming increasingly important to the market as farmers diversified the crops they were baling and needed more flexibility. One of the more interesting footnotes about the Gehl 1470 is that at least some units were fitted with Massey Ferguson monitoring equipment, reflecting the parts-sharing relationships that existed between manufacturers. Massey Ferguson sourced round balers from Vermeer during parts of this era, painting them MFEF colors for distribution through their dealer network, and equipment crossover was not uncommon. The Gehl 1470 sits in that complex web of 1980s agricultural equipment business relationships that makes the era fascinating for historians and confusing for anyone trying to track parts today. Number 9. New Holland 848 Round Baler, 1980s. The New Holland 848 represents the transition generation of New Holland round balers, the machines that bridge the gap between the original chain-based 850 and the belt-based roll belt machines that New Holland would eventually produce. The 848 introduced two significant technological upgrades that set it apart from what came before. First, the 848 featured airbags to adjust bale density. Previous New Holland round balers used tension springs to control how tightly bales were packed, a mechanical system that worked but offered limited precision. The airbag system on the 848 allowed operators to adjust density through air pressure, providing finer control and more consistent results across varying crop conditions. Wet hay behaves differently than dry hay. Heavy crops pack differently than light ones. The airbag system gave operators a practical tool for managing these variables. Second, the 848 had the capability to produce smaller bales in addition to its standard output, an important feature for operations that needed flexibility in bale size based on storage capacity or livestock feeding requirements. Not every farm had the handling equipment to move full-sized round bales efficiently, and the ability to produce a smaller package made the 848 usable in a wider range of operations. In 1982, New Holland introduced the 855, the first New Holland round baler, to offer net wrap as the fast net option. But the 848 remained relevant through the mid-1980s as a capable, field-proven machine. By the late 1980s, New Holland was shifting its round baler lineup toward belt-based designs, and chain-based machines like the 848 were being phased out entirely. The first New Holland roll belt baler, the 630, arrived in 1989, using belts instead of chains to form the bale, requiring only 35 horsepower to operate and producing 4-foot bales. The 848's era was over, but it had been an important machine in the evolution of one of agriculture's most important brands. Number 10. International Harvester Hesston Large Round Balers, 1976 to 1985. Our final machine is actually a family of machines rather than a single model, and it represents one of the more fascinating business arrangements in 1970s and 1980s agricultural equipment. International Harvester's use of Hesston-built large round balers sold under the International Harvester badge through IH's dealer network. International Harvester was one of the most powerful names in American agriculture during this era, with a dealer network and brand recognition that few competitors could match. But IH had not developed its own large round baler technology in the early to mid-1970s, when the market was growing rapidly. Rather than fall behind, International Harvester sourced round balers from Hesston Corporation, machines that were functionally Hesston-engineered products, but carried the IH name and were sold through IH dealers to IH-loyal farmers. This type of arrangement was not unusual in the agricultural equipment industry of the 1970s. Massey Ferguson, as noted earlier, sourced round balers from Vermeer and painted them MF colors. Gehl built balers for Ford. The complexity of developing entirely new product lines was significant, and it made economic sense for larger brands to source from specialists while maintaining their own brand identity with customers. For many IH farmers, the round baler they ran in the late 1970s and early 1980s was essentially a Hesston machine. The Hesston engineering was well regarded. One operator specifically noted that the Hesston-built machines produced for IH always made super nice bales, comparing them favorably to balers from other manufacturers. The build quality and bale consistency that Hesston was known for translated directly to the IH-badged versions. When International Harvester collapsed financially and was acquired by Tenneco Case in 1985 to form Case IH, these IH-badged Hesston machines became orphans in a changing corporate landscape. Some were supported through the transition, others were not. The machines that survive today exist in that no man's land of pre-merger agricultural equipment, neither clearly IH heritage nor clearly Hesston heritage, but a product of the business reality of an era when the agricultural equipment industry was rapidly consolidating. If you enjoyed this video, Subscribe for more forgotten agriculture history and drop a comment below. What's the oldest baler you've ever run and what's the story behind it? We want to hear from you.